Welcome back. 27 civilians are reported to have been killed by rebels linked to the ISIS group in the eastern parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Congolese army say militants carried out killings on Saturday in a village in North Kivu province, which borders Uganda. A local civil society leader said the attackers used machetes to murder people in their own homes. The military said they were from the Allied Democratic Forces, which has killed thousands of civilians in recent years. The Congolese and Ugandan armies have been jointly fighting the ADF since November last year, when the militants launched a deadly bomb attack on Uganda's capital, Kampala. The head of the African Union, President Macky Sall of Senegal, has meanwhile expressed grave concern at the rising tensions between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. Each country accuses the other of backing armed rebel groups. Sall has appealed for calm and urged both sides to resolve their disputes through dialogue.
On Saturday, Rwanda said 2 of its soldiers were being held captive in eastern DRC by the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, a rebel group active in Congo. Kigali says the rebel group received support from Kinshasa. The Rwanda Defense Force said 2 of the soldiers had been kidnapped while on patrol. Earlier, the DRC government suspended flights to Rwanda and summoned Kigali's ambassador, alleging Kigali's involvement in supporting the M23 rebel group in the eastern parts of the DRC. The M23 have also been excluded from the Nairobi peace negotiations between the Congolese government and numerous militia groups fighting in the eastern region. More than 120 armed groups are active in that region, many of them remnants of regional conflicts over the past 2 decades. A warming of relations between the DRC and Rwanda had begun since DRC President Felix Tshisekedi came to power, but recent attacks by the M23 have revived tensions. In 2012, the M23 had captured Goma, the provincial capital of North Kivu, but the insurgency was quelled in 2013. Meanwhile, more than 70,000 people have been displaced from their homes in North Kivu province in the past week due to heavy fighting between government forces and the M23 rebels. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says 7,000 have sought refuge in Uganda. Others have fled their homes to places of safety across the country, including Goma, which is now facing shortages of food and drinking water.
So for analysis on this long-standing tensions between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, we're joined now by Izak Khomo, who is an African affairs analyst and Channel Africa producer. And Dr. Khomo, very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. A sad news of the rising tensions between the DRC and Rwanda. As we mentioned, the AU President Macky Sall saying that he is calling for dialogue between the two. This is also at the back of the conference in Malaba. What do you think would have been behind the scenes talks at that conference about this situation?
Well, behind the scenes of the conference basically, it has got a lot of, it's got many things. It's talking about the unconstitutional change of government and also the rise of insecurity. Basically, they had their eyes on the issues of terrorism, Islamic terrorism. But now this whole issue has come up in the middle of that, and it's basically very sad because it's actually taking the DRC Congo back to the year 2000 when the RCD Goma refused to integrate and they started fighting. But then you find that I don't know if the Africans will be very serious with this issue, as the people of the Great Lakes. The people of the Great Lakes have not been very serious. I don't know if the AU will be serious, simply because the M23, whenever they come up well armed and with a lot of logistics and well trained. They've been supplied by somebody. They're being assisted by somebody. And of course, it is the neighboring countries which are actually using the M23 as political leverage in issues which could be actually supposed to be solved diplomatically. But then the African Union has got to come up straight and give stringent warnings to those parties who are actually formulating this instability in the Eastern DRC.
So, as you mentioned, we did mention at the introduction earlier on how Uganda and the DRC joined forces at the end of last year in pursuit of the ADF, and we're talking about these latest accusations, DRC accusing Rwanda of backing the M23 in their campaign of violence in the eastern Congo. This, as we've just said, it's a long-running conflict with myriad groups who have interests and have themselves looted, being party to the instability in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Give us a sense of just how fluid is the situation.
You know, I would not actually talk about how fluid the situation. I'll go straight to the point. Yeah, basically that the M23, what they are demanding, it's not actually known. Yeah, it's nothing that they're demanding that they want to, there is something that they want as a national group or whatever. Yeah, but then you find that the whole issue about rebellion in Eastern Congo, it's out of order. But you mentioned two groups, the ADF and the M23. Now, with the ADF again, you find that the ADF is a real group which is Islamist and everything else. But then there are strong allegations which say that basically there's another group which is actually masquerading as the ADF. And this group is highly sophisticated, well-trained, well-equipped, and they actually carried attacks. And those reports say that the ADF, which is actually well-equipped, is actually under the Ugandans. And to support that, they talk of the ADF attack, which they did 2 years ago against the Tanzanian base. Now, in that attack, 14 Tanzanians were killed. But the issue is this, that in that attack, the ADF attacked at sunset, and they continued the attack throughout the night to the early hours of the morning. The ADF rebels, they had night sight equipment, and they also were able to jam the Tanzanian communication. Now, those are not capabilities which an ADF rebel group would have. Those are highly sophisticated military capabilities which the Tanzanian forces do not have, the DRC forces do not have. Those of night sight and of jamming. And the guys withdrew. So it shows that that was not real ADF. It was a highly trained and highly supplied force. And it points a finger to the Ugandans. Same with the M23. The M23, when it gets armed and it starts attacking, it's well coordinated. And it's a known fact that these people are supplied and supported by Uganda. But nobody's coming, supplied by Rwanda, but nobody's coming to take these two countries to task. Simply because these are very big clients of some very powerful Western countries. So that's why you find that there is much more involved than what meets the eye.
And what would those countries' interests be?
Well, basically to destabilize the DRC. The DRC has never been given a chance to be stable. They want to force certain issues in the governance of the DRC, in the government. In fact, initially, I think they wanted to basically break up the DRC into different separate sovereign countries, yeah, but that has failed. But then they are trying to actually exert pressures on the government, leverage, so that the form of governance it actually changes and gives outside players an interest or a way of getting into DRC. It should be realized that the Eastern DRC, where the fighting and instability is taking place, is one of the most mineral endowed areas of the earth. That area, it is the eastern part. It is the Western Rift Valley. Now, the Rift Valley and the Western Rift Valley in that area, it is endowed with all the minerals that you can think of, from coltan to uranium. In fact, the uranium of the Hiroshima bomb, it came from that area of the DRC. Yeah, there's gold, there is everything there. There is nickel, there is the whole lot. And right now, the most important mineral is coltan, which is actually processed into semiconductors, yeah, for your computers and your cell phones. That's the only place where you can get coltan in that quantities. The others, they're in China and the US and Russia. So you find that area, it has got to be within certain, within the domination of certain countries and certain people and certain interests. That's why the Congo has always been destabilized.
Where does this put, and there was much made about the DRC joining the East Africa bloc and the undertaking by the bloc to send a military peacekeeping force to the Democratic Republic of Congo to bring an end to the fighting, the insurgency, particularly in the areas that we're talking about now. And there was speculation about whether the three countries could work together. Uganda, Rwanda.
You see, so that whole setup basically is a Trojan horse. Huh? Because if you look at the countries of the East African community which are actually involved in destabilizing the DRC, it's Rwanda and Uganda. Now, if these countries are the ones who are actually going to contribute forces to the DRC to destabilize it, it's a Trojan horse that the DRC people will never allow it. That will be the political end of Felix Tshisekedi. That proposition is a Trojan horse.
There were questions around why President Tshisekedi would undertake such a move. What are your thoughts around it?
Well, Tshisekedi actually, when he came up, he actually vowed that he was going to solve the problem of the Eastern DRC, and he opened up relationship with Rwanda and also with Uganda. And this relationship went up even to a military alliance where he allowed Rwandan forces to get into the DRC. Yeah, but that did not change matters. He also allowed the Ugandans to come into Rwanda, into DRC, to come and chase the ADF. But that has not got anywhere. And in return, now you find that the M23 has actually, it is a reason. And I think why you don't, something that people are not talking about, I'm surprised you're not talking about it, is this, that on Thursday there was heavy fighting. In fact, from Wednesday there was heavy fighting in Eastern DRC, where even the MONUSCO forces were involved. The M23 attacked the MONUSCO force, and the MONUSCO issued a strong statement condemning the M23. And the MONUSCO force, together with the DRC force, they stood together and fought against the M23. The end result was capture of these M23 fighters, 2 of them, and killing several others, and capture of equipment and ammunition. But it turned out that those killed, they were soldiers, they were Rwandan soldiers. And right now, the captured people are Rwandan soldiers. The DRC has paraded them. They've sent protest messages, letters to Rwanda, and Rwanda has replied saying that no, the Congolese forces have attacked their forces and kidnapped them from Rwanda into the DRC, which is a flimsy excuse. To say that the United Nations can vouch for the fact that the Congolese forces were attacked in the DRC. So you've got this situation whereby Rwandan regular forces have been actually captured, with the equipment in the DRC. Now we want to see how that will unfold at the AU, at SADC, at the UN, and in the EU, because these are some of the countries which actually support Rwanda and Uganda.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you as always for your insight, Dr. Izak Khomo, African Affairs Analyst and Channel Africa producer on the latest situation there in the